Now, a man sits alone in his room and listens back to old tapes of his voice from 30 years ago and remembers his lost love. The premise of Krapp's last tape is a melancholy meditation on ageing, a kind of soliloquy across the decades. Samuel Beckett's play continues to fascinate actors, but the renowned actor Stephen Rea has a couple of advantages. He'd worked with Beckett over the years, and 16 years ago he decided to record his voice for the taped part. So when the call came to play the role, he was ready. When I went to meet him in rehearsal at the Barbican today, we discussed the play and his wider stage and screen career, including the hit film The Crying Game. But I began by asking Stephen Rea why he always knew he'd be an actor.
Well, I was an early show-off, you know. I would always run into my granny's house and perform, you know. Well, just, you know, show off. Making elderly ladies laugh.
Excellent. Now, you recorded your voice, which is an integral part of Krapp's last tape, a few years ago. When did you know you wanted to do the play?
It wasn't a fixed ambition, you know. I saw some productions where I thought there wasn't a sufficient gap between the young voice and the older man's voice, you know. And I thought I should record it while I was young enough. So I recorded it, what would now be 16 years ago, I suppose. And it was just in the back of my mind. I even lost the tapes.
Remind those who aren't familiar with it that the premise of the play and what actually happens that involves this tape recorder. We're sitting next to your prop, but it's a reel-to-reel tape recorder. What is the premise of the play?
Oh, well, I think it's every year he listens to a tape that he's recorded earlier, and this time he's listening to something that he recorded 30 years ago, to kind of have a perspective on the way his life is going. And actually, as you know, it's not going very well. Well, it's Beckett, you know.
So I wonder, is the play a kind of King Lear for male actors, that they think about one day I'm going to be 39 and I should record my voice, and then at 69 I'll play Krapp's last tape?
I never think of it that way. I really didn't think of it that way. I mean, I've done a fair few of Beckett's plays, and it isn't unusual that I would be doing this, I suppose, you know, and Gary Oldman.
Yeah, how do you feel about the fact that you wait for one Krapp's last tape and then two come along at once?
I know. And then there's other people recording the tapes till all's no more, you know, which is fine, you know.
I think Samuel West recorded his voice when he was 39, recently revealed that. He's got it all planned out.
Yeah. I mean, there's no guarantee that when you record it when you're 39 that your voice is going to sound appropriate. I only recorded mine so that it would sound different to the older voice.
39 today. Sound as a bell. Apart from my old weakness. And intellectually, I have now every reason to suspect at the crest of the wave. Or thereabouts. Celebrated the awful occasion, as in recent years, quietly at the wine house. Not a soul.
You have worked with Samuel Beckett. What was he like?
Well, you'd have to say he was an utter gentleman. A totally nice man, a lovely man. Manners galore. And I met his family, a lot of his remaining family, when they came to see the show in Dublin. And they too are divine, you know, and so sweet, you know.
What insights, if any, did he give you into Krapp's last tape and how to approach his work?
There's a couple of things that he said to me which have not only influenced how I would do Beckett, but how I would do everything. And if there's actors listening and they say, I've heard these things so often, would he ever go and jump in the river? Well, I asked him the meaning of one particular line, and he said, don't think about meaning, think about rhythm. Now that's a great note for anybody, I think. He also said when Clove in Endgame is going he says to Ham, "I leave you." He says it repeatedly, and I said, when he says it this time, is he going to the kitchen or is he going for good? And Beckett said, "It is always ambiguous." That's a good note for acting, I think. And it's a good note for the torment of method acting, which requires that you know every detail of the... Really, you've got to know the ambiguity of everything.
Also, what you said earlier, rhythm over meaning.
Yeah.
I mean, is that liberating, or that's the opposite of the way we think about acting, where you're supposed to really understand exactly what's motivating a character?
Yeah, that is liberating. I find it liberating because you live within the language. I mean, we probably understand an awful lot about people just from the way they talk to us. We don't have to have a note of who their granny was and all that, you know.
Perhaps my best years are gone, when there was a chance of happiness. But I wouldn't want them back. Not with the fire in me now. No. I wouldn't want them back.
I have to ask about Waiting for Godot, because it's a play which is performed so often with kind of celebrity pairings. I gather you're not the biggest fan of it, and in a way, nor was Beckett himself. Is that right?
Oh, he said he was fed up with it. I asked him about it. He said, "Oh no, it's just that." And I'd seen a production of it in Canada, and I had the nerve to say to him, and when I saw it, it looked to me like a parody of an existential play. And he says, "That's it, exactly," he said.
What is it like, your relationship with this version of yourself, when you've already been touring Krapp's last tape for quite a while, and it's going to continue after this run in London? How has your relationship with the play and listening to yourself changed over the months?
I'd like to say it's got better or more. No, I just find it, I mean, I hadn't listened to it for years and years, and I thought, well, this may not work, and I think we may have adjusted a couple of phrases, you know, like there's a point where he says, where he has two initials for a phrase, and nobody knows what that means, so we said the full phrase. That may have broken Sam's heart, I don't know. But he was very good at changing everything, you know. I remember that when we did Endgame. He changed lots of it. Oh, listen, don't, you know, when Clove comes in with a ladder and he looks up that window, oh, it's the wrong window. He goes, "Don't do all that. Go to the right window straight away," you know. He'd seen enough of that, you know. So he was very flexible theatrically.
Well, you see, you say that, but there's real interest now that there were all these rules which are still being enforced by the estate about, you know, only men can play the parts in Waiting for Godot, for example. What's your view about that?
Well, I think Sam would have felt that. You know, I think he said, "Look, I've written plays that for women to do." You know that. You know the truly great plays that Billy Whitelaw did. You know, and
Happy Days.
Oh my God! And you know what you know the note that he gave her. Well, she's sitting up to her neck in sand, and at one point in the play, she says, in the rehearsal, she says to Sam, "Where should I be looking at this point?" And he thought, and he said, "Inwards." Now, isn't that a good note?
That is a great note. I wanted to ask about another partnership you've had, which has been very rich, which was on screen with Neil Jordan. I think you've made 10 marvellous films together, including The Butcher Boy, The Company of Wolves, The Crying Game, and The End of the Affair. What's been the secret of that collaboration?
Well, I did his first film, and it was my first film too. You
Angel?
know, Angel, and it's a beautiful film, you know. And I did the second film, and then I was just doing theatre, and well, I shouldn't say it, but someone said, "Is Stephen in all your films, Neil?" And he said, "No, he's in all my good films." Thank you. And I love his work. I just love his work, and he's a true master of storytelling. You know, with The Crying Game, he didn't send me the script. We just sat down and he told me the story, and it's devastating when the writer tells you the story. He gets to a certain point and he says, "And she's a man." You think, "Oh my God, I'll do it." Yeah. It was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I remember the buzz around that film because there was a whole word-of-mouth excitement about don't spoil the twist in the middle of the film. I wonder what it was like for you, though. You've been a successful actor for many years, but you got a kind of overnight global fame from that, and you kind of became an overnight sex symbol as well.
Oh, no, I'd always been that. You weren't paying attention. Sorry. Well, when it was on in New York and every single screen was used watching this film, you know, it was like, and you know, a gay pride march came down Washington Square Park and started chanting my name. You know, it was very, very strange. You know, but look, people have to be themselves, and maybe that's what the film is saying. You know, it's better to be yourself. You know, I mean, the most moving thing in the film of The Crying Game, I don't know if I'm talking too much or too long, but is that when he tells the boy, that he has to leave, and she says, "But why?" And he says, because you're a man." And she says, "Well, okay, but before you go, just kiss me." And he kisses her. And he knows he loves her. Him. And I think that's kind of very beautiful. No matter what world leaders say about the whole thing. I think it's a great film. And it's a great film as well because it deals with the troubles, but it doesn't embed itself in the same imagery or the same problems. It's got something else to say as well.
Stephen Rea, I really enjoyed that interview. Krapp's last tape is at the Barbican in London from tomorrow until Saturday, and as you may be aware, Gary Oldman's Krapp's last tape is on at the Theatre Royal in York. On tomorrow's Front Row, a new exhibition explores the world of James